Well, President Trump and Secretary of State Mike Pompeo lauding the latest meeting with Kim Jong-un, saying that talks of denuclearization in a second summit are a very real possibility. So what does this mean for future negotiations? Here with some expert insight, national security analyst Dr. Rebecca Grant. Thank you so much for joining us. As always, we appreciate it.
Good morning, Heather.
So it sounds like a lot of work being done in a positive direction. We have the Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, calling it, quote, very productive. We have North Korea saying productive and wonderful. What do you make of all this?
Yeah, those are some pretty nice words, but I agree this has been productive, and here's why. Pompeo has to get Kim Jong-un used to the idea of having international inspectors go back into North Korea. They haven't been there since 2009. So any real denuking steps, whether that's breaking up missile parts or inspecting fissile material, are going to require huge inspection teams. And this is what Pompeo says that Chairman Kim has agreed to allow inspectors. A lot of logistics to work out, but he's agreed to do it.
And let's talk about what President Trump had to say. He tweeted out, obviously, he says this was a good meeting, but a couple things. He said he looks forward to seeing Chairman Kim again in the near future, insinuating the second meeting will happen. He also said progress made on Singapore summit agreements. On both of those counts, what do you think?
Yeah, so President Trump said back at the time of Singapore that he would be meeting many times with Kim Jong-un. And this is critical because Singapore's #1 objective was to change North Korea's relationship with the world. So that political goodwill, Trump, Kim, President Moon in South Korea, that has to keep going. And adding the agreement to allow inspectors back in at some time in the future is big. I think we'll hear more details of that when they firm up the second summit.
Yeah, and as we've discussed before, in terms of those inspectors, needs to be done differently than the inspectors going into Iran. So hopefully we will learn something from that. But let's talk about this second topic. DHS says that there's no reason to doubt China denials of hack attack, the hack attack that's being alleged. But should we be worried about China meddling in the midterms like President Trump says?
Really, DHS needs to get their act together. They gave a very narrow denial about Chinese spy microchips. Apple and Amazon said, no, we don't have a problem. But here's the thing. DHS cannot possibly certify that the supply chain of every U.S. company, big and small, is free from these attempts. We know China's trying to infiltrate and hack. And Heather, I'm not as concerned about our midterms. DHS has a strong plan, and our system is very dispersed. But we know that China is trying to infiltrate, hack, and use infected software to get into U.S. business. That's how China does business, and it's a real threat.
And we know that they've attempted to interfere in elections before. Unfortunately, we hear all this about Russia, but we don't hear a lot about China in the past. Right now, our Secretary of State Pompeo is actually meeting with their foreign minister in China, as you and I discussed. So you expect this topic to come up?
I think it will. They will, obviously, Pompeo will debrief on North Korea. That'll be a big thing in the private session. But there's been a little bit of a truce in the cyber war between China and the U.S. That may be off due to the tariff and trade disputes. So I expect Pompeo to raise the cyber hacking and China's long history of intellectual property theft. We know they've hacked into big programs and big companies. And yes, that's going to be on the agenda for Pompeo.
It's interesting how the rhetoric has increased just prior to his meeting there in China, his fourth stop on his tour there. Thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Grant. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Well, the time now is about 20 minutes until the top of the hour.